Hello, it's Cecilia Towns, the Sporty Esquire, and we are here for another episode of Workin Women Wednesday, the series where I share with you the things that I have learned and am learning from my career as an attorney, as an entrepreneur, and as a former student athlete. So last week we talked about conflict between peers at work, and a lot of y'all had a lot to say about that. So clearly the conflict is brewing at work. Well, this week we're going to take it a step further and talk about the conflict that exists between the manager and the people that they are supervising. And this, I will tell you, is probably the most common conflict that I deal with as an employment attorney. They're just, that's really what a lot of the complaints are about managers and the people that they are managing. So the first kind of conflict that I see and want to provide advice about is the conflict that's really related to just personality differences. So it's, you're as a manager can't quite seem to get through to your employees. You can't quite seem to get good attitudes out of them and good work performance. And at the end of the day, it's just you guys are not vibing well. And the first thing that I always suggest, or I always ask the managers, is have you talked to your employees? Talk to your employees. Find out, well, why are you not working the way we need you to work? And after you get those answers, you need to be willing to adjust to how you're managing. There is no 100% wrong and right way to manage. Other than the right way being the way that is going to allow you to maximize the work efforts of your employees. At the end of the day, you as the manager cannot do all of the people's jobs that you manage. So you need them just like they need you. And so it's very important that you are open to managing people in the way that just brings out the best in them, even if that is not jive well with your philosophy of managing or doing work. I was at an event this past week, and Larry Quinlan, who's the CIO at Deloitte, told a story about how he was managing this woman and they had different ideas about management and getting their work done. They just communicated differently. They just couldn't see things eye to eye. And he ended up firing this woman. Well, after he fired her, he went to the people that she was actually managing, and they were pissed off. They loved this woman. They didn't see why she wasn't there anymore. And he ended up having to sort of go eat crow and ask this woman to accept her job back. And the lesson that he learned, and the thing that I'm trying to share with you, is that no one way of managing is right or wrong. What's important is that you are getting the most out of your employees. So if you find that there's conflict with personalities, talk to them and figure out, well, what ways can you ease the situation? What ways can you change your communication style, change your management style to get the best out of them? If that doesn't work, if the communication doesn't work, if your efforts at changing don't work, or they're just too extreme, then you bring in the third party. You bring in someone from human resources. You bring in a conflict resolution specialist who can help you guys figure it out. So the second kind of conflict is the conflict that exists for disciplinary actions. Although we want all of our employees to just be bright-eyed and bushy-tailed all the time, getting all their work done, that just doesn't happen. You unfortunately are going to have to deal with disciplinary issues as a manager. And the big thing here is to follow the protocol. 99% of workplaces have standard policies on how to deal with disciplinary actions. If you work in a workplace that doesn't have that, you need to push for it. If you're going to be a manager, you need to have a standard way of disciplining your employees. So follow that protocol. But there's two important things that you should know about following the protocol. First, you need to follow it in a fair way, and you need to follow it in a consistent way. You cannot get to, enforcing the protocol for him and not for her. or for her in that group, but not them in this group. And if you don't, that's where you're going to get your claims of discrimination and unfair work practices. So be consistent with the way you're meting out your discipline. The second thing that you want to make sure that you're cognizant of is that you're, again, communicating with your employees. So if that first call for discipline is a verbal warning or a warning in writing, talk to your employees that are having issues and find out why they're having the issues. Oftentimes, if you get to the root of why an employee, misbehave, or why an employee's behavior is changing for the worse, you can sort of nip it in the bud, and you can help the employee be successful despite whatever obstacles have led them to, sort of not performing up to your standards at work. So communicate with them, even though you're still going to follow the protocol in a way that is fair and consistent. The third type of conflict that I see at work is the more serious, and that's where you as the manager have been accused of discriminating or harassing someone. And this is tough. Most managers I see are not, intentionally treating people differently. They're certainly not harassing people. So when these claims come, they take it very personal. And so my first advice about this type of conflicts is just take a woo-saw. Just take a deep breath and understand that a lot of these claims are, even though you're named personally, they're not about you personally. They're about some internal conflict or some internal misunderstandings that the claimant has. And so take a deep breath and just understand that it's okay. And your attorneys, your human resources people, they're there to help you figure it out. The second thing that you want to do is you want to follow the protocol. If there should be, if there is, but there should be, so it really shouldn't be an if, but whatever standard practice is established at work for, people who file complaints, you need to follow that. So if that's, cooperating with interviews, if that's turning over documents, or if that is, escalating a complaint to a higher level, do that. Follow the protocol, trust the process, because when you don't, that's when you actually make the situation worse. The other thing that you need to be aware of when, you're dealing with complaints of discrimination or harassment is that you do not want to retaliate. And this point kind of touches in a very important way on the second kind of conflict of disciplinary action. So what I see a lot of times is that managers get a complaint of discrimination or harassment lodged against them, and the complaint is made by a bad employee, someone who just has a terrible work record in the first place. And then out of frustration, that manager says, well, I should have done X, Y, and Z to you because of your disciplinary issues. I didn't do that. Now I'm going to try to do it. That is the epitome of retaliation. And that is a separate claim in itself, and it only makes the situation worse. So that is why it's so very important to, when you see the disciplinary issues, handle them up front before a complaint exists. If you find yourself in a situation where you're getting complaints against you, then you can continue to discipline the person and prove that you're not retaliating, but that this is just a continuation of the pattern of behaviors that have been existing. So, that's pretty much, in a nutshell. You should be communicating with your employees. You should be following protocol, and you should be open to being a manager in a way that maximizes the work product and the efficiency of your employees. So this has been Cecilia Towns for another episode of Workin' Women Wednesday. Thanks for spending some time with me, and make sure you check me out next week for another episode. Bye.